Welcome, everyone.
Everyone.
Desiree, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing?
Good. Feels like forever.
Right?
No, didn't we do it
Welcome.
last month?
Say that again.
Didn't we do a talk last month?
I think we did. It's been a long month, but thank you for everyone that are joining us this evening. What is today? A Tuesday, right?
It's Tuesday.
Wow. For those who don't know me, my name is Luz Cabrales, and I am the founder of Scranton Films and the co-founder of the Independent Film Creative Hub. And your host today, along with Desiree.
Yeah, for those who don't know me, my name is Desiree Zielinski. I am also the co-founder of the Independent Film Creative Hub. I'm also the founder of NEPA Film Society, which is a local filmmaking community here in Northeast Pennsylvania, and I'm also the organizer of the Mystery Box Film Challenge.
You do a lot of things, Desiree.
I do.
You're all so let's talk about a little bit before we introduce our guest today about the film festival, the NEPA Film Festival that's coming up on the 14th through the 16th, correct?
That's right. 14th, 15th, and 16th.
And you're also part of that committee. Oh, wow.
Yes, I'm on the committee for NEPA Film Festival. I think it's going to be a great time. You're going to see a lot of great films, like local regional films, like Luce's The Championship Season. It's going to be playing at the Waverly Community House, as well as the Mystery Box Film Challenge, where you'll see a lot of local and regional filmmakers who participate in the challenge, as well as my film will be in that one as well. So it's going to
Yes,
be great.
I'm really excited. I am so bummed because I'm not gonna be able to make it this year. I think I have been able to go for the last few years, and this year, I mean, it's good because I have a good gig doing helping on a feature film, so it is kind of related. So it works out, but I am not gonna be able to be there on that Saturday for the Scranton Championship season. But I wish everyone, they have a good time, and I think. They're also doing a gala, opening gala on Friday, and it starts at 6 p.m. Now, this Northeast Pennsylvania Film Festival is hosted by the Waverly Community House and is also sponsored by WVIA. So definitely check it out. There's a lot of good films, and what better way to spend a weekend than to support local filmmaking, regional films, even international films. The whole idea of independent filmmaking starts at home. So make sure you go get your tickets. You have the website right here, and also, like Desiree said, that mystery box. We have a lot of filmmakers that are learning how to make films. Some already know how to make films, and they took a challenge to make a film, and they did it. So, how many films do you have?
We have 8 that are going to be showing for the Mystery Box Film Challenge, which is great. It's a mix of a lot of local around this region and out of state, which is great, and some student films, which is wonderful. And everyone gets the same items and prompts, and it's amazing that everyone comes up with something completely different.
Exactly. And there's also another festival coming up that is a little bit farther, but it's not too far. It's like 45 minutes.
No, it's a really great festival. It's about an hour here from Scranton. It's the 6th annual Jim Thorpe Independent Film Festival, which will also be taking place in April. That's April 20th to the 23rd. It's going to be the live in-person 4-day event at the Machunk Opera House in historic Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. And Jim Thorpe Film Festival embraces the rebellious spirit of the Molly Maguires and screens bold and unconventional films that challenge conventions and spark spirited debates. And their motto is eyes and minds wide open, and they take that definitely to heart. I've attended the Jim Thorpe Film Festival. We both have. And it's just a wonderful festival. I mean, a lot of their blocks are very popular, especially the Grindhouse block, which shows at midnight on Saturday, I believe. And that's a really popular block. That's really like the films that really hold nothing back. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you're from this area, come to the NEPA Film Festival. If you're not, still come to the NEPA Film Festival, and same for the Jim Thorpe.
Yeah, their tickets are on sale now, and I think they just released the program today. It's at jimthorpeindiefilmfest.com. To get tickets.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And I see that you are also planning another NEPA Film Society. And I forgot to put it here. So while you tell everyone Let me know the
Yeah,
date.
so it's coming up. That will also have another NEPA Film Society Indie Filmmaker Meetup on April 29th at 12 p.m. Hopefully at Black Watch Cafe in Nyack Park in Scranton, weather permitting, since they have a very nice outdoor patio. But they're calling for 60
Mhm.
degrees on Saturday. So, I mean, I think we should be,
Perfect.
but but if the weather's bad when we get closer, we might change it to Commonwealth again. So be on the lookout for details on that since we're coming on the third month again. So it'll be fun
Very
to
cool.
hang out and
Yeah.
collaborate and network again.
Okay, it's the NEPA Film Society meeting, April 29, 2023. But enough of us. We have a very, very special filmmaker with us today. He is not just a writer, he's a director, producer, and he loves horror. Okay, he is from Jersey City, New Jersey, and he is joining us today. I'm going to show you a little bit of his one of his projects, a trailer. But I just want to tell you a little bit more about him. He and I have to read this because it's pretty long, which is good. You know, that's always great. Let me
Yeah.
get rid of this comment here real quick, just to make sure it's not. Sorry about that. But basically, Tom Ryan is a writer, director, producer, and he, like I said, he loves horror, and that's what we're here to talk about. We're going to talk about his anthology films and also his company that he launched in the area of to help small businesses and with promotional spots, and also just everything that he loves about filmmaking. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna show his trailer to his latest one of his projects, and then we're gonna talk more about with him and just kind of pick his brain on what he loves about filmmaking.
Yep.
And other than that, here you go. Enjoy.
How would you like a taste of the old days, Jack?
What do you mean?
I mean, I take you on a trip back in time. Back when movie theaters enjoyed huge crowds, packed houses, and the endless echoes of cheering and applause. A time when the silver screen was really made with silver. Have you seen any good movies lately?
Wow.
That was great.
Welcome to the show, Tom.
Welcome,
Thank you so
Tom.
much for being here.
Thank you for having me, ladies. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about independent films with you.
Great, great. And we are just very excited because you are a true independent filmmaker. I see, for what I've read about you, for what I looked up, you are doing a lot of great things around your community as well, and also with independent filmmaking. But before we dive into that and just sort of how you created your company that makes anthology films, I want to talk about how it all got started, right? In your bio, it says that you just have a love for genre films, especially horror.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about that, and the child in you when you first got introduced to horror and started thinking about maybe this will be your calling in becoming an independent filmmaker.
Well, in all honesty, it didn't start with horror. It started with the making of Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. It was a special I saw, and I noticed that Desiree
Don't
is a
tell,
little bit of a
don't
Star
tell
Wars
Jessica.
fan,
My own heart.
just a
So,
little bit. But yeah, I was really attracted to the behind the scenes stuff that I saw. The stop motion animation they were doing, with tauntauns and spaceships and using a lot of blue screen. And it blew my mind. As a child, I was always a fan of the Jason and the Argonauts movies and the Sinbad movies, and just that stop motion, that Ray Harryhausen art technique, and it just drove my imagination wild. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I was a little boy and I loved to play with toys, and it looked like grown men playing with toys behind the scenes, and I thought that was fantastic. It really, it really got my interest going to figure out how movies were made, um, and also growing up in that time, there were just so many new groundbreaking films for me to see. Uh, Star Wars, the Mad Max movies, all the horror that came out in the early 80s and the late 70s, a lot of very strange horror that was coming out in the mid to late 70s, psychedelic type horror, cosmic horror, I guess you could call it. Um, there was also just all the staples: Jaws, Nightmare on Elm Street,
Right.
Friday the 13th, Halloween. All that stuff was pouring into my brain. VCRs had just come out during my childhood, and there was like one local video store. There were no blockbusters or anything like that. And I'd walk in that local video store, and it was, I mean, it was like a treasure trove of, low budget, extremely creative horror films and science fiction films. And I think absorbing all that information simultaneously, I was big into comic books. I was drawing a lot of comic books at the time. All of it inspired me into this creative direction of, art, music, movies, and I don't think there was any turning back after that.
That's great. No, that's great. And it's great to that you do mention comic books, because I know that you did a little series called Midnight. Talk to me a little bit about that, because every time I talk to people that are very creative, right? They know the art in comics, and I think that's very important as well. Even though it's not filmmaking, I mean,
Mhm.
nowadays, with Marvel, like they're making great films, but when you're looking at a piece of paper and you're looking at the comics, talk to me about a little bit about that and what drew you into doing that project.
Well, I was a huge comic book fan, huge comic book collector, and I just admired the artwork. I admired the storytelling, and I guess comic books are really kind of a storyboard for a movie, right? When you get into filmmaking and you storyboard, you're trying to capture the vision of the way that you want the story to be told, the angles, how close, what kind of framing you want to use, and I obviously carried that over into my filmmaking as well. But I think it was probably the Halloween movies and Friday the 13th that really inspired me, and a group of my friends, and some of them were exceptionally talented in artwork. And we all really just kind of inspired each other to draw comic books, which all shared a similar plot, which was all of our friends in the neighborhood. We would all kind of represent ourselves in the comic books, and we would all be terribly murdered by a psycho in the neighborhood. And we'd create these different masks. And the one character I used to draw a lot kind of had this kind of like if you ever were familiar with the old GI Joe television series, there's Cobra Commander had
Yeah.
this cloth draped over his head, and my murderer looked like that, and we all kind of shared that same vision. I don't even remember who invented that look. I think it was a
Right.
friend of mine, Dave Leon, who was also an artist, and we would all just draw this guy chopping our heads off and running over us with cars and stuff, and we just kind of recreated the Halloween movie or Friday the 13th in comic book fashion. And then that kind of branched out into different stuff. As we all kind of got older, we'd start to create different stories, and whether it be science fiction or different, a monster or a werewolf or a vampire or what have you. And it was just an outlet for us to get a lot of our thoughts on paper. And it didn't stop there. We would actually, well, most kids, and we did this other stuff too. We'd play football and baseball and stuff in the streets, but a lot of times we'd go in someone's backyard, and I would just kind of assign people roles to play. And you're going to be this guy, and you're going to be that guy, and she's going to be this person and that person, and this is what happens. And we'd kind of just act it out and just make a movie with no cameras.
You were
And
a director
yeah,
early on.
yeah, I was doing it early on. Yeah, so that's how the comic books played into that. It was just a great medium at the time. It was doable, because even though VCRs were out, VHS cameras were very expensive, and we didn't necessarily have one right away, and no one had one. So comic books were how we got our imagination out to our friends and to our family.
Wow, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Desiree, I know you wanted to kind of jump into the horror part of it, so I'll let you jump on that.
Yeah, you might have touched on this a little bit. It's kind of like what really drew you into like horror movies specifically? Like what was it about them that really drew you to wanting to make horror films?
They were relatable to a certain extent. Horror films very frequently use children or teenagers as the subject matter and the focus of the murderer or the monster or whatever's happening in the film. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that young children and teenagers are immature, and they tend to believe in ghosts and monsters and things of that nature. And so they really play into that trope that they are the perfect target, where you would feel adults wouldn't react the same way to frightening things as children do.
Yeah.
I think that was built upon in a lot of those movies, and so it became relatable for me and my friends when we'd watch these movies. Oh, look, it's a bunch of kids hanging out in this abandoned building, or somewhere
Right.
they're not supposed to be, and they get, frightened by a monster or a
Yeah.
killer or whatever. Um, it was also the fact that horror movies are so much fun, or
Right.
at least they used to be. And when I say that,
Oh, why
I
used
mean,
to be?
well, yeah, and they still are, but I think when I was a child, there was a real focus on that entertainment value in a horror movie,
Mhm.
because I don't know that there was such a niche audience for that genre at the time.
Mhm.
And this is how you attribute the success of The Exorcist or Jaws. People that went to go see those movies were not horror fans, right? They
Correct.
were just people that
It's
were
true.
interested
Yeah.
in seeing what this movie is about. And I think over the years, horror has started to narrow that uh, to narrow that field down to these niche fans, which is a large group of people that are genre fans of horror. But I think I enjoyed a time when it was kind of more something that everyone could enjoy or everyone can watch. And with that said, of course,
Yes.
everyone was not going to see every Friday the 13th sequel,
Mhm.
and everyone wasn't going to see every Halloween sequel or Nightmare on Elm Street. There were a lot of families that steered clear of that stuff. They're rated R or what have you, and so
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
wouldn't go see them. But I think they were more broadly targeted, where they were trying to make films that were, hey, we need to throw some comedy into this horror film, or we need to throw something else into it so that we appeal to a broader audience. I think a lot of horror films would not have been accepted. So, like a film like Terrifier 2, back in those earlier days, I think would have been more of a grindhouse film where it's like, nah, you go and watch that at 1 o'clock in the morning somewhere.
Correct.
That's nothing that we could release to a broader audience. But I
Mhm.
think now people are a little bit more conditioned, less sensitive to that kind of stuff, and so they do now appeal to a broader audience. But I think you get what I'm saying
No.
about that, right? It was I think
Yes, definitely.
I think the filmmakers back then were not horror filmmakers; they were filmmakers that tended
Yeah,
to
it's
make
true.
horror movies, and
Correct.
um, and so they did try to introduce a lot of drama and narrative into their movies, as opposed to
Yes.
just scares and all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're right, because what I like about the old movies like Tales from the Crypt, The Twilight
So
Zone, which I
yeah.
know you're a fan of, is that, like, Lloyd Kaufman, like all the people, Savini, that do all this stuff. They were creating a story. They weren't just doing horror just because it looked cool. They were creating a story. They were telling a story, and I think a lot of their actors, a lot of their crew, they were having fun when they were making it, because they were making those special effects by hand,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's what I love about all those, that they really put thought into each
sure. You had a
project.
lot of extremely groundbreaking creative people
Mhm,
back then that had no idea how they were going to do that
mhm,
effect. How are we going to create that creature? How are we going to make this a reality? And again, I'm still a fan of behind the scenes,
mhm,
documentaries, Blu-ray extras, and stuff where you get to see these guys One of my favorites is on Netflix. I think it was called The Movies That Made Us. And
Oh my goodness.
basically,
I
Oh
love it.
yes.
and they show you how incredibly difficult it was to make some of your favorite movies in history, how they almost didn't happen, or how someone was recast at the last minute and you wound up getting that person that became the iconic representation of that franchise. That stuff is always so interesting to me, because as the viewer to a film, if you've done your job as a filmmaker, the viewer has absolutely no idea of the trials and tribulations that you went through to bring them that film, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And, that is really what a filmmaker is, right? We are trying to make something look easy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
When you put it up on the screen, you're like, oh, I can do that,
right,
And if someone says that, that means you did a good job, because they don't need to know all the little things. And we're talking about scheduling, we're talking about paperwork, why,
yes,
cast didn't work out, or how we need to make sure that props need to be done, right?
right,
So you are right when you say that you're crafting something, but you're creating something as well. But what you said about the comic books and the Twilight Zone, the Tales from the Crypt, all the films, is that they prep,
yeah,
right? They make sure that, I want to make sure it looks like this. I don't know how we're going to do it, but let's see what we can come up with. And I,
right.
and I really love that about horror films, which takes me into the other question, that you are specializing now in horror films, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken, right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And because of that, you have been able to make quite a few films, and now you have sort of an anthology series.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that, how it got started, return to the theater, and just what we saw a little bit on the trailer is the second
Hmm.
production, right, for
Hmm.
that franchise. So tell me a little bit about that. You tell me that story.
Yeah. So, independent filmmaking is hard. And when you don't have a lot of money to do it, it could be very time consuming. It takes you longer to get some certain things done. Um, what so during my career of independent filmmaking, there was a point in 2017 to 2018 when I had to decide what's my next project going to be. Um, when I started to think about it, I had just finished a feature film recently called Faces, and that was a very hard film to shoot. We had very little money, but we had a fantastic production team that was able to bring it to life. And when I was done with that, I decided, okay, what's the next thing going to be? I think there was a little bit of hesitation about getting committed to another feature film with one set of actors and schedules and locations. And I don't know, there was something in my head that said, God, I really don't want to get stuck doing one thing again for such a long period of time. I have so
Mhm.
many stories to tell. I'm never going to get all these out in time, right? And so I came up with the idea to do an anthology. And I said, I love, as you mentioned, The Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side, um, Amazing Stories, Creep Show. I could go on and just name Night Gallery, all the stuff that all those anthology series that I used to watch. And what I realized I enjoyed so much about them is that when you watch those, you weren't invested in one cast and one storyline for the entire film. You got to see, a story about a werewolf, or a story about an alien, or a story about a doll or a giant worm or what have you. And so I started considering those options and doing an anthology. One of the producers on our team, Russell Hackett, had written a short film called Bookworm, and he presented it to me, and it was really the launching point, the first short story we started working on. I wrote The Gift and Abducted and Endangered, which were the three accompanying stories to go with that. We cast them. We went through a lot of pre-production. Trust me when I say I'm making this process very short compared to what it really is. But we did that, and it was a very exciting time for me. I got to meet so many of the talented local actors, unknowns that were just extremely talented people that should be on the big screen, that should have their own television series. I mean, this is how talented these people are. And we really hit it off, and they really liked my energy, and they liked the goals I was setting for us and what we wanted to do. I wasn't thinking small, I was thinking big. Getting to work with all of them was an incredible experience. When we were done, We premiered it. We had an amazing turnout. It was a packed house for the premiere. Um, it was just such a fun ride. The film festivals, winning awards for all the independent, because I would submit all the short films independently as short films.
Mhm.
We got a lot of awards, a lot of accolades, and we got a great buzz going on. And when it was done, kind of being a filmmaker is almost like a junkie. Like it's done, and suddenly you're like looking for that next film, right? You're just like, what am I going to do next? I have to do this again. All the buzz is starting to die down.
You're
We
restless.
I need to create something. And so I just, I said, gosh, I think I want to do another anthology.
Mhm.
I've got some more stories to tell. And so this time around, one of my producers, Todd Staruch, had mentioned that he had a story called Splinter. And I read it. And he had worked with me on a couple of previous films, the Theater of Terror anthology, the original to mention. And he said, I've got this film and I think about making this my directorial debut. And we talked about it a little bit. And he said, yeah, I don't care how much money I spend on it. I'm just going to try to make it. And after I read the script, I said, man, I love this story. I really don't think that you should just risk not making it what it can be. I said, if you do this under the umbrella of Theater of Terror, I could really pour the resources into this. And so there was a little bit of a rewrite that I did with him, just to kind of shorten it, which it didn't really turn out to be much shorter. That's the one short story that's actually the longest of the four in the anthology. It's almost 55 minutes. Um, but we worked on that one, and then the next three stories just kind of vomited out of my brain. I just was on this. I was on this. I was really excited about it, and I wrote Soothsayer, which is a time travel story. I wrote Haunted, which is a ghost story, and then I wrote Robot, which is a science fiction short. And yeah, we put those together, and with a little narrative around it, just like with our original anthology. And this one really showed an evolution in the filmmaking. And
Mhm.
between the first film and this film, I think we've gotten a lot better. Once again, we've got extremely talented cast members and crew members involved in this picture, and we're really proud of it. We premiered at the Cranford Theater in late January, and it was just people loved it. We got such great feedback. They loved the anthology format. It was a lot of fun because for me, it's always fun to say, "What's your favorite story?" or which one can you relate to more? And you find that people really can, and they enjoy the format, and so it's kind of a favorite of mine.
No, and I like that because now, like you said, and we're watching just a little preview of the trailer again, just to kind of
Hmm.
spark the conversation. Because what I like about it is that if you're watching a film as well, you're doing an anthology, like you said, you are not only spotlighting actors that maybe will not get the opportunity in other projects that are bigger, and they get to be in a feature film, right?
Sure,
But
sure.
the feature film is composed of short films. So I like that idea a lot, just for the fact that, as far as independent filmmakers, but also, like you said, you keep the story going and it's always different. And now you're getting a fan base,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that, just kind of how it feels to have, you know, a fan base based on this this movie. Are you looking to do more, or is this something that may lead into another project?
So just to address the fan base, we have a wonderful support system with independent horror fans and just genre fans in general. Theater of Terror, we do a lot of appearances as often as we can, as often
Mhm.
as we can afford. I've done a lot of vending. I used to appear at a lot of horror conventions very frequently to push and promote work. I've also done a focus was on regular street fairs. When I noticed that at horror cons, I would be one of 20 filmmakers trying to convince people to give our film a chance. I realized that at independent street fairs, if it's a town fair, they're
Mhm.
just kind of, you know, t-shirts and selling coffee cups and selling like bracelets that someone might make. Or I realized that was the only game in town if I was selling horror DVDs. And so that was a very lucrative uh, branch to follow. Um, the fans are always wonderful, receptive, supportive. Our fans have helped us make the past two films with their donations and contributions and their support of us after the DVDs come out and the Blu-rays, buying them, attending our premiere, attending film festivals to watch our screenings. They've been wonderful and extremely supportive of what we do. And I love talking to the fans about our work. I love meeting the fans. I don't know how long we'll be able to do that and actually go out and meet people in person.
Right.
But at this level, we certainly can still do it and meet everyone and talk to them. And I enjoy that very much. And I mean, if you were to check out our Facebook page, you could find photos I've taken of almost every person that ever bought a DVD. And we take photos and we post it on our website because those people are the only ones that make it possible for us. There are no big Hollywood producers giving us any money. There's no one knocking on our door saying, I want to make this so much easier for you. It's the hardcore horror fans and the film fans in general that love what we're doing, that love the work that we're doing. I think they appreciate the fact that you could see the passion in what we do. We're not just slapping together some ridiculous, plot line and special effects and trying to sell it as a movie. We're putting a lot of thought and feeling and passion into our work. Like I said, the actors that we work with are very serious and very professional, and they give a level of a high production value to our films when you see these folks in our films. And so it's been great. And our fan base is wonderful. They subscribe to our website. They comment on our films, and they support our trailers and everything. So I love them to death, and I always will. Our fans are fantastic. I forgot what the follow-up part to that question was. I apologize.
It was just, do you think that this is something that maybe you have returned
Right.
to the theater of terror? Are you going to do another one and then keep going on that, or do you want to branch out and do maybe a different type of horror film or a drama? What do you see in the future for that?
That's a wonderful question.
Good question.
I love doing the anthology format. With that said, because of where we feel we're going and the direction that we're going in, I've been discussing with people on the production team, moving in the direction of doing another feature that's not an anthology, for the sole purpose of we kind of want to leave a mark, and I think anthologies are wonderful, but I think to really catch the eye and the ear of the people that whose attention we're trying to catch, I think we have to do a really good, memorable feature that's got a great story and a great solid ensemble, and give us time to flesh out these stories. Anthologies are wonderful, but sometimes they don't give you enough. I mean, our shorts are on an average 22 minutes. Like I said, the Splinter is the eyeball. It's at 55 minutes. And I think it's just because the story demanded that. But with the other ones, we have about 20 minutes to tell these great stories, and we're able to do it, and we accomplish that very well. But so many times I watch those shorts and I say, God, I wish I could have made a feature out of this. Like, we could have done so much more with it. And I think that's the direction we're moving in. Whether or not it's a horror feature is to be determined. I've got a great script that's been presented to me by my colleague and friend and actor and executive producer, Jason Chicalese. He's worked on a wonderful horror script that I think would really harken back to the 80s, just with the connectivity, that feel that you get from it, the way the story is told, the characters that he's developed. I think it's wonderful. We're looking at that. I'm also working on kind of an ensemble feature that's very similar to Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels or a Pulp Fiction, something along those lines, which in a way feels like an anthology because you're going to have separate individuals and different kind of stories all colliding and joining together in the one story that we're doing. That's one it's in the pre-writing process. We're kind of brainstorming ideas and the format for that one. And then I'm thinking about doing a horror comedy as well. I've had some really fun ideas and some feedback on something along those lines. So it's that we haven't made a decision yet, but we are seriously considering about 3 projects with a lot of small projects sprinkled in between. So I can't be 100% definitive on what direction we're going in next. But I certainly don't think it's going to be another anthology. I think it's going to be a full-length feature film.
Oh wow, I can't wait. I can't wait, and I'm sure you're gonna make it happen because it looks like you're that type of person that you set yourself a goal and you just make it happen,
I try.
Yeah.
which is what you have to do. Now we're gonna take a little bit of a different direction before we come back to
Sure.
this. Desiree, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you do in the community as well, and
Okay.
with your company.
Yeah, and we were reading up on that you did form TOT Videography, which is a subsidiary of Theater of Terror LLC.
Yeah.
If you want to tell us a little bit about that, you're supporting local small businesses with engaging commercial ads. So if you want to get into that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So this idea started um, after my last job.
Mhm.
Um, my one day, I have a full time job. I am an independent filmmaker. I had a full time job in sales, and the owner of the company I worked for passed away one weekend,
Oh.
and suddenly it just turned the company on its head. He was uh, he was someone that handled everything basically himself, and so when the controls were left unmanned, people had to come in and kind of look at the numbers and realize that the company had some financial issues that they had to address. And I wound up being let go along with a good portion of the sales team. And I took that opportunity to say, I think this is the time for me to kind of take what I love and do it as a living. And since I cannot make independent films as a living just now, because Netflix is not, subsidizing my work, um, I decided to maybe try videography. And one thing I knew is that businesses usually cannot afford a videography services because they can be pretty expensive. Look at anyone that's ever gotten married and had a videographer do their
Right.
wedding, and they'll tell you what it cost them. So I tried to do affordable videography services where I basically provide for free a brainstorming sessions. So if you have a small business and let's say you sell, I see the Scranton Theater painting in the back. So let's say you're selling those Scranton Theater paintings or your paintings in general.
Mhm.
So I'll sit down with you and I'll talk to you about what are you selling and how do you want to present it and how can we do something fun with this and make this an interesting commercial and that's all free consultation and free brainstorming and I pitch some ideas back and forth until the customer is happy and really believe that something would work for them. And then I'd offer affordable videography services and I would use what I learned in independent films because
Mhm.
I had to figure out how to make visually big budget scenes or atmospheric set designs. How do I do that with very little money? And
Right.
so I would take that
Yeah.
experience and carry that over to the small businesses and offer to do that for them and make them look like they've got a big budget commercial that they could share on their website, on their social media pages that wouldn't break the bank for them. Unfortunately, when I first started the videography services, it was probably about a month before COVID.
Oh,
Oh.
And I had about 5 clients that were really interested, and we were talking and we were in the brainstorming phase. And then suddenly COVID hit, and I think the majority of those businesses went out of business.
Oh.
I could not bring it, you know, I could not approach them and say, "Are we still doing this?"
right.
Because
Yeah.
it was pretty obvious that it was not a time when they could spend money on advertising. They were trying to pay employees, they were trying to pay rents and keep their doors open, and so that was kind of a monkey wrench in the plan. And COVID happened, and we had begun shooting Return to the Theater of Terror at that point, and we were actually able to continue shooting that full anthology throughout COVID safely without incident.
Right.
But unfortunately, the videography business kind of took a back seat. Now, with that said, I do have a handful of very loyal customers that continue to come back to me frequently, and not so much for the commercial ads, but more for documenting. I have a dance school that's a
Oh,
wonderful
yeah.
customer of mine, and I'll do their events and such. Now that COVID is over, I am going to start leaning back into that.
Mhm.
I'm kind of waiting for businesses to really get back into the swing of things because when COVID hit, they were doing really well and business that had money to spend. And I was getting
Right.
that kind of feedback from my customers. They were like, yeah, I've got money to invest in an ad.
Mhm.
So right now, I don't know if everybody is really 100% back just yet, but I think it's about time that I'm going to start putting feelers out again and get back to it because my community has been wonderful for our filmmaking. Homeowners, the city council members, the mayor, Everyone has been so receptive of what we do when we're making our films and allowing us access where normally if you were a big budget studio, you'd have to pay a lot of money to do these things in town. But because they understand where we're at and that I'm an independent filmmaker, and I'm a
Mhm.
citizen, and I'm passionate about what I do, they're very reasonable with allowing me to access to places that I wouldn't normally have access to at either very low amounts and contractual amounts, and
Yeah.
it's made my life so much easier. And so I kind of wanted to give back to the community and say, hey, let me help these small businesses around here
Right.
get back on their feet. And so hopefully we'll be back doing that more full time so I could leave my current job. My
No, and
boss
that's
didn't hear me say that, did
Great.
no, we'll cut that part. Don't worry.
Thank
But
you.
that's very important, just because, like you said, you have to make relationships with the community because that's where you're making your films.
Yeah,
And for you to do that at a time when COVID wasn't even existent, what just says a lot about you. That you are willing to put in the time and help the community succeed, because as well that helps us, right? That
of
helps us
course.
as filmmakers. I think a lot of people don't realize the business that filmmaking is.
Yeah.
How Hollywood was able to make it, right? It's not
Hmm.
just it was not just Hollywood. It's because it's a business,
Right.
and that part of it. Just to kind of touch on that, because I'm gonna ask you about your screening that you have in New Jersey,
Hmm.
but just why do you think it's important for filmmakers as well to know that even though it's our passion to do filmmaking, that it is also a business and that could help you uh, fund the next project?
Yeah, I mean, for me, movies have always been about the audience, always. Um, have you ever sat in an empty movie theater and had a great time? Usually not. I mean,
Right.
I've had wonderful times sitting in packed theaters where people could not contain their laughter or couldn't contain their fright or couldn't contain their tears. It becomes this community experience. There's nothing better than walking out of a theater and you realize that you all connected to the story and the characters the exact same way. Makes you feel like you belong. That's what we all want. That's what social media is all about. That's why you like to have likes on your social media posts. Makes you feel like you belong to a group, a community. You all agree. And movies are a wonderful way to do that without getting into fights or arguments, right? So,
Right, or
um,
just minimal.
or just minimal, right? Yeah. So, but
Oh,
it's all
that's
for me. It's always been about the audience, and
right.
um, as an independent filmmaker, when I sit in a screening and I see a packed house watching my movie, that is the best medicine for me. And those people will tell you if you're doing a good job or not,
No,
because
and
yeah, it's
go
because
ahead.
it's not personal for them, right? They're
Yeah.
not saying, "Oh, let me see Tom's movie," and I'm going to judge Tom. And people might know that you're the filmmaker, but they care about what they're watching on the screen. And there's nothing more rewarding to a filmmaker than to have people enjoy their work and hear them laugh and hear them jump in their seats and to see that reaction. It's so important. And so for me, it's important to communicate to people what I'm doing. I'm shooting films in our township. I'm shooting films in our neighborhoods. I'm shooting films with actors that live here or close by. And these are our artists and these are our creatives and you are who are we are doing this for. You, the audience, our citizens, are the people that live near the theater that will attend. You are the ones I'm making this movie for. I can make movies for myself, and I used to when we were younger. We'd use a VHS camera. We'd make something ridiculous, and we'd go up in the living room and take the tape out of the camera and put it in the VCR, and we'd watch it and laugh and never show it to anyone else because it was absolutely ridiculous. But now I want to make movies for people. I want to make people laugh. I want to make them cringe. I want to make them think. And it's just for me, they are the most important. If there is no audience, there is no point in making a movie. There really is not.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's a great point. I mean, when I make my films and I screen them, I'm most half of the time I'm just looking at the people. I'm
Of
looking at the
course.
people. I'm waiting for that moment because I also edit my films. So I'm like, or like at that point, they should be laughing. At that
Right.
point, they should feel something. And if you see that in the audience, it's just priceless, right? Because you know that what you intended on screen, when you're behind the computer, when you're behind the scenes, you made it happen. And that's amazing, because
Mhm.
now you made someone feel something. And it's just like advertising. You make people feel something that they're going to go buy it. In
That's
this
right.
case, you
Yep.
make people feel something that they're going to watch it again, or they're going to tell their friends. And that's the best thing, which leads me to the screening of Return to the Theater of Terror,
Hmm.
which is the trailer that we saw. Let me
Hmm.
put it up again, just so people can see what we're talking about if they got
Oh,
in
yeah.
here a little
Smart
later.
Castle Cinemas.
Let me we are here. It's April 22nd,
Yes.
right? Return to the Theater of Terror, and it's in Smart Castle Cinemas.
Hmm.
What better independent theater than that one?
That's right.
The guy who started it all for comedy, Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. So tell me a bit about that and what people can expect.
So Smart Castle Cinemas was formerly Atlantic Cinemas, and it was recently purchased by Ernie O'Donnell and Kevin Smith, filmmaker. And those guys, when they opened that theater, they said this is going to be the home base of independent film, and we're going to support it, and we're going to show independent films. And they were not kidding. I contacted them. We held a premiere in the Cranford Theater, which shout out to Doreen if she's watching this, was just above and beyond receptive to independent filmmakers, supportive, excited, gave us a beautiful venue, super professional venue. The sound and the video quality are top notch. Their staff is top notch. And the community is very interested in independent film. And we held our premiere there, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful venue. And when we did that, I couldn't get enough. And I said, I want to do it in another theater. And as I was thinking about it, Smod Castle was kind of getting into their groove. And they started advertising a few other independent films from fellow filmmakers who I am aware of, and I see that their films are showing down there. And I said, I got to reach out and tell them I'm interested. I did. Ernie reached back out to me and told me, of course, man, we're showing indie films here. Come on down and let's make the arrangements. Um, they made it very easy for us to set that up. Pick a date, pick a dime, and sell some tickets. And so that's what we're doing. It's on April 22nd. We're doing it at 1:30 p.m. Because I just personally wanted to make it easier for people to travel long distances to see the film and have time to get home. Of course, Return to the Theater of Terror is a film that you should watch at night in the dark, and it's kind of like creepy tales of terror. But at the same time, I'm more interested in getting more people to attend and making it convenient for them. And on a Saturday, I think I could do that if I do it in the afternoon. We get a kind of an
Yeah.
early screening, and then we have some time for a Q&A and an after party afterwards.
Oh, you're gonna be there.
I'm going to be there. Cast and crew
Nice.
are going to be there. Yeah, absolutely. I show
Right.
up to every screening.
Oh,
I try to show up to every film festival that our film appears in. If I cannot, if there's a conflict, I still promote it because I want other people to attend. But I try to make every single one because, again, for me, screenings are test audiences. I want to hear how they receive it. I want to hear what their opinions are. It's important to me, and so I will absolutely be there with a good amount of our cast and crew as well, to answer questions and kind of interact with the audience and see if they love it.
Oh, I think
Great.
they're gonna love it, and that's even better. I mean, I thought it was just a screening, so that's great. I unfortunately cannot make it. I will be doing some work that day, but I will hope that maybe you can screen it again another time, and
We're
just
gonna
let us
try.
know.
Other screening times, or
Yeah, right now we don't have anything else set up. We are in the planning phases of trying something a bit bigger. It's going to have to be related to distribution.
Right.
Don't know if it's going to happen. I'm hopeful, but I'm always realistic about these things. But in the meantime, I am using my personal abilities and resources to contact local theaters and see who's interested. Of course, it's got to be an affordable situation for us. We
Mhm.
spent a good amount of money on our film as well. Besides donations, there was some out of pocket money that went into finishing the film. And so I don't want to bury myself too deeply in a hole. But as long as we have crowds turning out and buying tickets and attending the screenings, we could continue to fund more screenings. And this is a movie that I think needs to be seen theatrically,
Right.
because like I said, it really is like those old throwbacks, those Twilight Zones and those creep show type movies. It is a fun movie to watch in the theater, because there is so much that you could react to, and there is so much that you could laugh about and enjoy with your fellow film goers. That for me, that's where it's supposed to be seen, and I just kind of want people to see it there and have fun at the movies again, and have fun sitting down with their community and enjoying something again. So
That's great. Well, you definitely should. We'll talk later because we are in the works of something big. So definitely, I think your film will be great for that venue that we're thinking about. But I really do hope that this goes well for you and you get to that point of the next step, right? The next step in your filmmaking adventure, because it's more than a hobby, it's more than a passion. It is something that it looks like that's what you want, that's what you live for.
mhm.
And I appreciate that in every filmmaker that shows passion, more than passion, it shows commitment for doing that. So what I do, because this show is all about that. It's about motivating people,
Mhm.
filmmakers, students, veterans that are in the industry for a while, to either connect or to just make more films, right?
Yeah.
So we always have a question at the end for every filmmaker,
Okay.
and that is, what advice will you give to up and coming filmmakers, or it's a two part, or what would you have told yourself, your younger self, that you would do different? So you can do either one.
Okay. I think I'll do the advice because what I would do differently, I think I, I wouldn't give myself advice to do anything differently necessarily, because I do believe that the mistakes are part of the learning process,
Right.
and you don't evolve unless you make mistakes. And I think a lot of the mistakes that I made only helped me grow. And if I didn't make those mistakes, I don't think I would appreciate the learning process as much. You know what I mean? If someone's a rocket scientist without going to school, they don't appreciate what it took to get there, right? They don't appreciate that, the learning curve there. So I don't know that I would change anything or give myself advice to do anything differently. But the advice that I would give to up and coming filmmakers or young filmmakers is that making the movie is important, and making it well is important. Well, of course it is. But
Right.
what's really important is your preparation and a plan. Um, there's nothing more embarrassing than arriving to set and something goes wrong and you have no solution. There's nothing more embarrassing than not having a schedule in place, and the shoot is going to take place next week and none of the actors know when to show up, or they don't have the location, or that there's so much preparation that goes into making a film: the pre-production, the table reads, the location scouting, the
Mhm.
agreements that you make with people that are either working for free or providing you a location or whatever it is. For me, the advice that I give to everyone is respect every single person that's involved in the process. Respect them enough to keep them informed. Respect them enough to come up with a plan where you expect issues. You always have to expect problems on a film. And even when you have all those solutions ready, you're probably going to run into a problem that you didn't anticipate, because that's what filmmaking is. As long as you are showing everyone how prepared you are, or how prepared you tried to be leading up to the film, I think you'll have the respect of the people that you work with, and you'll have the confidence of the people that you work with. And that makes for a really great experience on set. When people know you're serious
Right.
and they know that you put the time into making sure that they're not inconvenienced, they respect you so much more and they appreciate the process so much more. I've showed up to film sets where I'd sit around for 8 or 9 hours, and then when it was time for me to be on camera, because I've done some small acting roles as well, when it was time for me to be on camera, I realized that the director had no idea what he was going to do next with that scene. Had no idea on
Mhm.
camera angles, had no idea about choreography or blocking. And those type of things could be very frustrating when you're working for nothing, or when you're working for very low amounts of money, because you understand it's an indie film. So if people are going to sacrifice their time, their talents for you, the least you could do is come up with a plan, be prepared, and respect them for what they're doing for you. And I guarantee that the rest of the process will come easy. Even when you run into obstacles, everyone will face those obstacles together instead of looking at you and saying, "Didn't you think that this could happen?" And you don't have a plan. So I think that's the thing that I've always done with all my films is that I've always respected everyone that have been, kind enough to see my vision, entertain it, and be a part of it. And so the least I could do is make sure that they had a wonderful time making that movie.
That is well said. Desiree, when you do that clip that you do on Facebook, just the audio for specific, make sure this is the first one because this is great advice.
It's very,
Everyone should know that
yeah.
we are not here to inconvenience people that are helping us. We're here to be ready.
Especially if everything, like everyone's dedicating their time voluntarily.
Mhm.
It's really usually the people you're asking to help and they want to help you on a voluntary basis are doing it because they love the craft as well
That's
and
correct.
kind of respect them. And then it's like I've done my own film projects, all voluntary, and people came out and we've had wonderful times because we've prepared as much as you can. You try to prepare as much as you possibly can, but things will happen that you don't expect. But if everything's good and everyone's taken care of, especially when you feed people, so you have to feed
Right.
people.
Have some water on set, please.
And everyone's gonna have a great time. And I've had sets where like everyone had so much fun and enjoyed themselves.
And that's what you should do when you're making movies. It's fun. We're all playing make believe.
Mhm.
And if you're not having fun, then playing is not fun, and that's what we're doing. We're playing and let's have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. So, speaking of inconvenience, we don't want to inconvenience you, and we want to thank you for being
Almost
here.
like an hour, but I mean, if you want to say like what your favorite all-time horror film is,
Oh, okay. You want to get
well,
my
we can all
all-time
answer
favorite?
that question. But
So I always give this answer whenever I get interviewed. I'm usually not a person that makes favorite song, favorite actor, favorite movie, favorite, because
yeah,
today it's one thing and tomorrow it's another.
Mhm.
Um, so many horror films I absolutely love. When I read the question on the paper, I gave it some thought, and I still don't have an answer. But I'll throw out a few movies that I do really love. The original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are two of my really favorite movies. They're so different. Sam Raimi was making a horror film in the first one, and then he was making a horror comedy in the second one, and you could kind of see that transition. I
Mhm.
think he took all those elements from the first one that he thought were fun and took them into the second. Those are a couple of my favorites. If we're going to get it more seriously into horror, less comedy, High Tension is really one of my favorite ones. And if you haven't seen that, it's a French film, and there's something really deeply frightening about the way that narrative unfolds. If you've never seen it, you should give it a try, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by it. It's a great one. Um,
Okay.
gosh, the original Nightmare on Elm Street was a favorite of mine for years. Really, really favorite of mine. I don't know if the sequels kind of diminished it a little bit for me, because then I kind of felt like, yeah, it was just kind of, regurgitating a lot of the same stuff. And Robert Englund is brilliant. He's just a great actor in all those movies. Um, but that at one point was one of my favorites. Um, you know, gosh, it's again, when I make lists, I'll sit here and name you 100 movies
yeah,
You're gonna have
that
to
I
start
love
blog about it now.
in the heart. And I'm probably gonna, the interview will end and I'll say, wait a minute, I should have mentioned this one that I really love. There's so many. I love so many horror movies, so many science fiction movies, so many comedy movies, so many action movies. I just love movies in general, and it's because the ones that are my favorites are the ones that made me feel and think about them and talk about them later. And so the list can go on and on and on. If you told me what horror movie would you watch if you were stranded on a desert island, I couldn't answer that question. I have no idea. I'd grab the closest one to me. I don't know, whichever one it was.
Exactly. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Um, well, again, I mean, we thank you so much for being
thank you for
here.
being here.
We really appreciate your time. I think someone out there is really looking at this, and I hope they take your advice because it's just perfectly well said,
Thank
right?
you so
It's
much.
great.
And if anyone is listening and they ever want to find me on social media, our website is theaterofterror.net. You could subscribe to our mailing list. But if you find me on social media, if there's any filmmakers out there that ever want to ask me any questions, I'm more than willing to answer questions. Just message me. You could post on one of my posts that you have a question. You could subscribe to our mailing list and you could write me through that way. You could write me on Instagram. You could write me on Twitter. And I'd be more than happy to offer guidance or advice of anything that I've experienced myself. I'm not the guru of indie filmmaking, but I could certainly tell you what I've experienced in whatever your question pertains to. And I'm happy to help. And we're all here to help each other.
That's
Great,
right.
great. Definitely, I'm gonna reach out, and I'll make sure that people, if you have questions, this is it. Advice doesn't come for free, so this is good because he knows what filmmaking is and independent filmmaking.
Yep.
So again, we thank you for being here. We're gonna close out the program real quick, and then we'll let you go. And
Thank
we're
you,
gonna
ladies.
show the trailer at the end again for those who are interested in going to the screening.
Come to
Definitely,
Smodfest, please.
yes, for sure.
Everybody
So,
go.
go
Yes.
right ahead, Desiree. Do your thing.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Tom Ryan, for joining us this evening on our Scranton Talk show. We always have wonderful events coming up, like we told you in the beginning of our broadcast, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see any of these previous talks. All the videos live there. We also have a podcast where we throw the audio from our interviews on there on multiple platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where you can get any of your podcasts. You can listen to our previous talks on there as well.
Yes, and Scranton Talks is in part possible through a grant from Lackawanna Arts and Culture Department. We are very thankful for that. And again, if you are looking for ideas of who you want on the show, please send us your comments, send us your message. Please do not send it on our personal Facebook, but send it through the Independent Film Creative Hub so we can keep track of that. And also just be out there and collaborate. This is
Ask me
your
what ideas
time.
you want us to do.
Yes. If anyone can get Desiree, anyone from Star Wars, she will be happy.
We are going to have a Star Wars Day talk. We will.
Yeah.
We will.
So we'll more on that next time. But again, thank you so much. We're gonna close out the program, and I'm gonna show that trailer. Tom, if you don't mind hanging out backstage for a little bit, just so we can say our proper goodbyes.
Of
Thank you
course.
so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Mhm.
How would you like a taste of the old days, Jack?
What do you mean?
I mean, I take you on a trip back in time. Back when movie theaters enjoyed huge crowds, packed houses, and the endless echoes of cheering and applause. A time when the silver screen was really made with silver. Have you seen any good movies lately?